Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Upgrades. I'm Jeremy Knoll.
And I'm John Suarez.
And today we are here to talk about Mishra's Burnished Heart, a deck from the Brothers War Commander decks. And we're going to be talking about this one. So this and the other deck, the Urza's deck, are both all old border, which is really cool. I think that's a neat one. I have talked before, if you saw the other episode of this as well, I have talked before about how the fact that the new artifacts with, color pips in them look a little weird to me, but I think that this one is actually really cool. I like a lot of what's going on in this one. So to kick us off, this deck starts off with Mishra Eminent One. Why didn't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Mishra is a 5 mana 5/4, so a little bit cheaper than Urza.
Yeah.
Which is nice, comes out of turn sooner. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you create a token that's a copy of target non-creature artifact you control, except its name is Mishra's Warform. And it's a 4/4 construct artifact creature in addition to its other types. It gains haste until end of turn, and then you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Mm-hmm. As we learned while playing these decks, that is a really sweet ability.
It is.
It's not only to try and to attack, but even if you don't get to attack, the deck has just a ton of value artifacts to gain some value whenever you do that.
Yeah, there's some really cool things you can do with that. So, like with all upgrades, we are going to go over the new cards in the deck and then suggest some cards that we would add into the deck. So first off, we have Ashnod the Uncaring. This is a 1/4 legendary creature, human artificer for 2 blue-black red. So this is the alternative commander to the deck. It has Death Touch, and it says, whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, if one or more permanents were sacrificed to activate it, you may copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this one's kind of neat in that it's playing a little bit off of the infamous Ashnod card, which is Ashnod's Altar, which you sacrifice a creature to get 2 mana, so that's the mana ability. So you can't actually copy that from Ashnod's, from her
you don't get to just use the altar with this. I think that's on purpose.
It is. It's very much. But I just like that kind of mirrored image of like a really famous artifact of Ashnod's Altar.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool. There are a lot of really cool things you can do with this card, though.
Yep. The next card we have very much looks like a dragon. Turns out is a Drake, Glint Raker. 3 colors and a blue 1/3 flying Drake. It gets +X+O, where X is the highest mana value among artifacts you control. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may reveal that many cards from the top of your library, put an artifact card revealed this way into your hand and the rest of your graveyard. I like this card. I like it as a way to just draw cards and deal just a little bit of damage.
Yeah.
I don't like that it has to deal damage to a player. I'd much rather be able to kill a planeswalker here or there, but...
Yeah, and it's interesting because, it's going to get a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger depending on what else you have on the board, and that's going to get you a little bit more. It is reveal rather than just choose
just
from
getting
among them. So you do get, everybody gets to see what other cards you're putting away, but, that happens sometimes. That's fine.
Yeah.
The next one is a sorcery for X, 2 black, and it is Terraceer's Devastation. Again, old name that I'm not sure. You lose X life and create X tapped Power Stone tokens. Then all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn for each artifact you control. So a pretty good wipe if you have the ability to put a bunch of mana into it. You can get a bunch of those tokens and then just give everything a bunch of -1/-1.
To be fair, in this deck, before even looking at artifact creatures, you have 30 artifacts in the deck. So it can just be a Wrath for 4 to 6 without even making Power Stone.
Yeah. If you're just paying 4 into it,
and you just happen to control a bunch of artifacts, whether that's Vault of Whispers or...
Yeah, it's got some really good versatility there.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily going to always be like a mutilate where it's just the number of swamps you have, or cycling Decree of Pain or anything like that, where it's always going to be -2/-2. It's you get to kind of choose a little bit more.
Yeah, you get to play it.
So,
all right, next card we have up is a dragon. Blast Furnace Hellkite. This is 7 colorless red for a 5/5 creature, so 9 mana. It has Artifact Offering, which I don't believe we've seen before. Obviously, we've seen Offering, but that is, you can cast the spell as though it had flash by sacrificing an artifact and paying the difference in mana cost between this and the sacrificed mana cost. And it includes color. I'm not gonna lie to you, until I read that, I forgot you could cast it as an instant.
Yeah.
Forgot you could do that. Saviors of Kamigawa was a long time ago. So
that was like snake offering.
Yeah,
like
you had
that.
a snake, rat. Yeah, you had a bunch
rat
of
offering, all those.
it does have flying and double strike, and creatures attacking your opponents have double strike. So this card is way better than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Like way better.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because you can use it defensively to say like, hey, now I'm going to put this in. So if you attack them, you're going to get a big buff. But you can also use it as okay, well, they've already attacked. I'm going to make sure that they all have double strike and get rid of that other player that's on the threat. So lots of cool stuff you can do.
That card's sweet.
It's very cool. Very cool. Our next one is Farid, Enterprising Salvager. This is a legendary creature, human soldier for 2 and a red. 3/3. Whenever a non-token artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a colorless artifact token named Scrap. For 1 and a red, you can sacrifice an artifact and choose 1. Put a +1/+1 counter on Ferret. It gains menace till end of turn. Go to target creature, John's favorite keyword, or discard a card, then draw a card. So it just makes
scrap.
Makes a scrap. Makes just a
scrap,
generic
and then you can use
token.
that scrap to do something.
That you can just sacrifice for other stuff.
Yeah. All right, this next card is probably one of the more exciting cards in the entire deck, and that is Machine God's Effigy. 4 colorless for an artifact. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact and it has tap, add a blue. It also just has the ability to tap, add a blue. So for some reason, you play this as a 4-cost non-clone, it would tap for a blue.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it is a clone that is a colorless card that taps for blue.
Yeah.
Very sweet.
Yeah, it's a little bit similar. We've been talking about how they kind of are slowly doing like versions of cards across some of the commander sets, especially, and this one's got a little bit of what's the red one that copies a creature and has haste. Something
Cursed Mirror.
Cursed Mirror. So
also in this deck.
Yeah, so also in this deck. So it's kind of another continuation of that in a way.
Yep.
Our next card, the thing I really like about this, before we even get into
Tombstone?
is the Tombstone.
Yeah.
That was when I first started playing Magic originally.
Odyssey block?
Back in Odyssey block.
Yeah.
So seeing that Tombstone made me very happy. So this is Scavenged Brawler. It's a 6 mana 4/4 artifact creature construct. Flying, Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink. 5 mana exile scavenged brawler from your graveyard. Choose target creature. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on. Put 4 +1/+1 counters, a flying counter, a vigilance counter, a trample counter, and a lifelink counter on that creature. Activate only as a sorcery. I love this card. It's so nice.
Big fan of the Tombstone marking for graveyards.
Tombstone marking.
That was a lot of words, and I just got through it all. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a 4/4 with all those abilities, and then when it's in the graveyard, you can exile it to basically sort of meld it. I don't know.
Yeah, now be glad that's a commander card and not something you have to ever face in limited, because I'm not sure how you'd ever beat it.
Yeah.
The next card we have is Smelting Vat. Big fan of this card as well. 4 colorless artifact. You pay 1, tap it, sacrifice another artifact, and you can reveal the top 8 cards of your library. You put 2 non-creature artifacts with total mana value less than the sacrificed artifact's mana value from among them and put them in the battlefield, and then the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. Now this deck has Metalwork Colossus.
Yes.
And it's very easy to play Metalwork Colossus in this deck for pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
So being able to sack creatures to cards like that, to Smelting Vat, and then bring it back.
Just getting whatever you want.
Yeah,
too.
just keep
because
going.
you're going to go get up to 2 cards that are, is it 11 that's Metalwork Colossus?
Out of the top 8, you get 11.
Out of the top 8, yeah, it's not. Watch the Commander Versus. You'll see it in action. It's nonsense. The next card, the last new card in the deck is going to be Wondrous Crucible. This is a 7 mana artifact. Permanents you control have Ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, mill 2 cards, as we said, just kind of on things. Then exile a non-land card at random from your graveyard. Copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So you get to do some really nonsense things with that because it is casting the card. You're copying the card and casting it rather than just putting it on the battlefield. So if you have any sort of cast triggers, you get all those going as well. I don't know how much that I like permanents you control have Word 2.
I think I like that.
It's interesting, but I'm not sure if it's going to be worth like the extra amount that this artifact costs.
Yeah, 7's a lot.
7 is a lot. So that's kind of where I was at.
It does give every permanent you control Ward 2. I don't know.
It's interesting.
The effect is really good, obviously, but 7's a lot.
Yeah, if you're thinking about like other things that are, asceticism that gives things hexproof, that's what, 3 and 3 green.
5,
green?
yeah.
Yeah, so that's 5.
Yeah, but it doesn't just randomly start copying things from your graveyard.
It doesn't. But I'm just thinking of that effect. So if we're comparing that and saying you're not limited to having to pay like 2 green pips, is it really worth that much for a little bit of protection plus this? So
yeah,
I don't know.
I'll play with that card.
It is an interesting card. I want to see how it plays out. Yeah. Sure.
All right, so the next thing we have are the cards that we would add. Obviously, this is not all encompassing. This is kind of trying to stay within the budget that we talked about, which is around that $5 mark.
Yeah.
So the first card to add was Goblin Engineer. Colorless red 1/2 Goblin Artificer. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for an artifact card and put it to your graveyard and then shuffle. And you can pay a red, tap it, sacrifice an artifact to return an artifact card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Obviously, there are other ways to pick up artifacts out of your graveyard, not just the Engineer.
But this one's neat because it does kind of work well with the new card that gives you the scrap. It can work with those power stones if you really need to. Yep. There's a lot of different artifacts that you can definitely sacrifice that are not as valuable as whatever you're going to be getting. So. Yep. Our next one is one from another commander deck, and that is Tawnos Urza's Apprentice, sticking with our theme of some Brothers War style things. And that is a legendary creature, human artificer, for a 1/3 for a blue and a red. It has haste, and for a blue and a red, tap it, copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an artifact source. You may choose new targets for the copy.
Yeah.
It's going to be real good when you're
sure will be.
When you're doing things like Smelting Bat.
Or if you just copy anything that triggers from Mishra making a token, and then you can copy that token and go,
real good.
No surprise, much like the last upgrade video we did, Scrap Trawler was a card that I would definitely add to this deck. I think the thing you mentioned in the last video was kind of like the package of Scrap Trawler and then either like a Mishra, Workshop Assistant or like a Mir Retriever. And then, all of those cards kind of go together.
Sort of stuff like that.
Scrap Trawler on its own is good. The other cards are kind of like, okay. Scrap Trawler just provides enough value on its face that just having Scrap Trawler is also just fine.
Yeah, they're a little bit more limited in their ability. Scrap Trawler is a lot more robust as far as the effects. So, the next one is one that I believe you said that you were surprised that it had an old border.
Yeah,
and then I realized that it's actually in the other deck. It's in the Urza deck, and that's Marionette Master. It's a 1/3 human artificer for 4 black. Has Fabricate 3, so when it enters the battlefield, you either put 3+1/+1 counters on it, or you make 3 colorless servo artifact creature tokens. Whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So that was a neat one to see in the Urza deck and being able to get that old border version.
Yeah, getting a 4 power, you just get a 4 power Marionette Master and just wreak havoc on the board. So I'm going to hop over. The card I was going to suggest adding was Sundial of the Infinite. 2 colorless artifact, pay 1, tap it, end the turn. And you can activate that only during your turn. I didn't realize that Sundial had actually spiked up a bit. So Sundial's a little bit above our $5-ish threshold. But you could also play cards like Obeka Brute Chronologist. It's just the same cards, calls blue, black, red for a 3/4, and it has the exact same text. Just tap it, end the turn.
Yeah, and this helps with your Mishra.
It does help with your Mishra. So when the ability for the token to sacrifice goes on the stack, you can just end the turn.
Goes away.
There are other things you can add into the deck that also make that work out. The next card that we'll probably cover will do some stuff like that. But yeah, there's some things where you just don't want abilities to end.
Yeah.
Until the end of turn,
that's completely fair. And I think that part of the reason that it did spike was because of Obeka.
Yeah, probably.
You're seeing a little more play in the
people are trying to do mean things with Sundial. I'm just trying to make 4/4 Mishra's worst. They're probably even legendary off Mishra, aren't they? They turn them into legends? Nope. Just the name Mishra's War Form, so I can have a bunch of War Forms.
Yeah, you can. Our next card, going back one here, is Saheeli Sublime Artificer. This is a Planeswalker. 5 loyalty comes in with, and it's 1, and then a blue-red hybrid, so it's 3 mana total. Whenever you cast non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, and then you can -2 target artifact you control becomes a copy of another target artifact or creature you control until end of turn, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So again, if you wanted to keep that as whatever that copy is, you can just end that turn real quick.
Yeah, it's kind of Artificer tribal, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The card I was alluding to with
Yeah.
things like Sundial the Infinite or
Figured you'd
Rebecca
like that one. So.
was Wish Call Talisman. So that is a colorless and a black artifact that enters the battlefield with 3 counters on it, 3 wish counters. And you can pay 1 to remove a wish counter from it and demonic tutor. Search your library for any card, put it to your hand, shuffle your library. But then your opponent gains control of it immediately. Activate only on your turn. But, you know, sometimes you can copy this with Mishra, get a copy, and then keep it forever, which is exactly what I want to do.
Seems mean.
I want it
also
forever.
exactly like the thing that you want to do. Our next one is, we discussed this one a little bit before this episode, and this is one that I think that John didn't even realize that what set it was from. Thought it was from
Definitely thought it was from
40,000, which makes sense just seeing the card itself. And that is Nautiloid Ship. It is from Commander Legends Battle at Baldur's Gate. It is a 4-mana artifact vehicle, 5/5, flying. Whenever it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard, and then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature card exiled with Nautiloid Ship onto the battlefield under your control. And this is one where I was aware of it because I really like the D&D sets, and this is one that I've been trying to, collect one of everything, and I like this one a lot, and I think this one's pretty overlooked.
I think this one's really good in this deck. Mishra copying this ability, exiling somebody's graveyard, giving it haste, and then attacking them for 4 and getting the creature that you just... That seems obnoxious.
Yeah.
It seems very good.
Really good.
Plus, how many times are you playing a game and you're just like, man, I really need to draw a Bajuka Bog, or I really need to draw my crew that lets me bounce my Bajuka Bog so that I can play it again. And this is just this, on a stick. The next card we have is a card that plays well with any kind of artifacts that enter the battlefield. And that's Panharmonicon. 4 colorless artifact. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes the triggered ability of a permanent, you control the trigger. That ability triggers an additional time. And this card wasn't really expensive at one point.
Yeah,
it was in like $15, $20 range.
It got up there. It was like $20 card.
Now it's 5.
Yeah, it's
just
dropped.
Under,
it's been reprinted a couple of times since then. It's got some like really cool alternative art.
Yeah.
I believe Mark Poole did like the alternate borderless version of this one.
And we're getting
really,
a
really
new
nice.
one in Brothers War with the schematic version of it as well.
Yeah, it is definitely dropped enough that you can pick one up for pretty cheap, and it can go in a lot of decks, and this deck is definitely going to be a really good one. Our next one is one that is from New Capenna Commander, and that is Determined Iteration. It's an enchantment for 1 and a red, and it says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, populate. The token created this way gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. That's going to be really good in this deck.
Yeah, it turns out that Mishra has the exact same, at the beginning of your combat in your turn, so you stack them.
Yep.
Make your 4/4, populate it.
Populate it, copy it, and get another copy of it. Gets haste. You do have to sacrifice it just like you
That's
sacrifice this.
okay.
And then you just either sacrifice more or you end the turn like we were talking about.
Yep. What we're doing is it's perfectly fine to sacrifice that in the turn. So
with that, like I was saying at the beginning that I really like some of these ones. The one that really stuck out to me was Brutaclad.
Doesn't it look awesome?
I think that Brutaclad looks so
that's because
cool.
old border cards are the best. Look how good those gold borders look.
The multicolor ones really, really
they're
pop.
so sweet.
They're really cool. Like the Joyra is cool looking. The Brutaclad is just so sweet to me in this one. And the big one that I know a lot of people are really excited about in this deck is that Expressive Iteration.
Expressive Iteration, the Emery. There's
some really cool ones. That Expressive Iteration has been very popular in constructed formats and in tournament formats and has gone up quite a bit. I was very happy that I got my foil like release week when it was still kind of cheap.
This Cursed Mirror is so sweet.
Cursed Mirror looks really cool.
Looks so awesome.
That looks a lot more like what I would imagine that card to look like than the actual first printing. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool ones in here. So what kind of cards would we look to take out of this deck?
Yeah, so there's a lot of just kind of filler artifacts, right? So because you want to have such a high artifact density, you could cut any number of little cards. If you wanted to take something like Pathetic Prism, if you don't need the color sorting, if you were able to upgrade your lands on your own to kind of be able to cast your spells, there's that. There's things like the Oni Cult Anvil, which is a fun card. It's not bad, but the fact that it only triggers once per turn, giving you a 1/1, like if you can get set up to where you can get a 1/1 every turn, then it's obviously much better. But
I think there's, the interesting ones like Ichor Wellspring and Servo Schematics.
Yep.
They're good if you can get the ability, sacrifice them, get the ability again. If you can return them multiple times, they get really good.
Really good.
After the first time, they're good. They're just, I don't know if they're like great.
Cards like Hellkite Igniter, if you don't really want the giant big finishers, because you have things like Geth, you have Herald of Anguish, you have this Blast Furnace, Hellkite, and Brooded Cloud with all your tokens. So I don't think you really need that super high end of things. I would cut Traxos, but he's so cool in his new art that there's just no way I would ever cut this card from my deck.
That does seem like
it's just a 7/7 with trample. Like the downside is irrelevant. You're gonna untap it every time, but it's not like anything you're gonna do anything broken with. It's just a giant 7/7.
I know one that you did get a chance to actually cast, and this one's from the commander set that came out with Strixhaven, was Fane the Broker, and it's got a lot of abilities.
That card has too much text on it. I might cut that because of the text.
Just because of the text.
It's pretty cool though. It lets you to do a bunch of different things, which is nice. But
it's different abilities.
I like Farid more than I like that.
Yeah. So those are kinds of some of the cards we would take out of the deck. Let us know in the comments what cards you would add to the deck and what you might take out of the deck if you were going to kind of tweak this a little bit. And make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that bell for any new episodes. I keep saying ring that bell, thinking Steven's going to
you just think he's going to pop in and smack it.
Just hit that bell.
Yeah, thank goodness that's not happening here.
Future episodes of Upgrades. For John Suarez, I'm Jeremy Knoll. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time.